Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series, Can We Save the Oakland A's? And we are finally past the 2040 amateur draft. Looking forward now to seeing what happens with this team over the next 3 weeks. We're thinking about making some trades, perhaps for a center fielder. Right now, perhaps our primary target, Walker Jenkins, is invoking his 10-5 rights and saying he doesn't want to be traded from the last place Marlins to the first place Athletics. But that is something that we'll continue to monitor over the next couple of weeks, see if the team can remain healthy. And then ultimately we'll have to make a decision as far as center field. Do we want to stick with the platoon of Sergio Palomares and Joe Harmon, or do we want to potentially try to bring in a veteran to give this strong team a potential boost as we head closer to the trade deadline and closer to the end of this season? And both Walker Jenkins and Kamani Ibekwe would be potential left-handed hitting center fielders that could probably provide a bit more offense than we've been receiving from Palomares this year against right-handed pitching. And our A's are going to be heading into the All-Star break feeling pretty good about how we've been playing. Ended up sweeping the Houston series after the draft, and we took 2 out of 3 at San Francisco before the All-Star break. After we get through the All-Star break, home again against the Giants, and then at Texas, at Colorado, and home against the Blue Jays over these final 2+ weeks to get to the end of the month of July and to the trade deadline. And as we sit here on July 16th, we've got an 8-game lead over the Rangers in the American League West, and we are up by a game and a half on the Twins for the best record in the American League. We actually also have just passed the Washington Nationals, who have lost 8 in a row by half a game for the best record in baseball. So if the season were to end today, our Oakland A's would have home field advantage for as long as we're alive in the playoffs. Jake Ortega still stuck on 46 bases, easily leading the American League, and he's tied his career high. Still has 2.5 months to hopefully extend his career high somewhat. Doug Weiss, 12-2 record with a 3.11 ERA for us this year, is second in the American League in wins. Interestingly, Steve Genus, who is pursuing a 7th consecutive American League Cy Young Award, is not leading the league in pitcher WAR, and after being a perennial contender for the pitching Triple Crown, in addition to winning all those Cy Young Awards, 3rd in the league in ERA, not on the leaderboard in wins, and first in strikeouts here, as he may end up winning a 7th consecutive Cy Young Award, but it seems unlikely that he will have a pitching Triple Crown for the 4th time in his incredible career. And as we take a look at the rosters for the All-Star game, 5 Oakland A's named to the AL All-Star team this year, but definitely a bit of a changing of the guard. If you've been watching us over the years, you've gotten familiar to names like Jake Ortega and Alejandro Landin and Mike Orozco being the All-Stars, and it definitely seems like this roster is transitioning to some younger players who are all-stars, which is probably positive for the sustainability of what we're trying to do here in Oakland. Our only all-star pitcher is the rookie Ernesto Comunez, who's been working out of the bullpen, 6-0 record, 3.17 ERA over 59 and 2/3 innings pitched. Not going to lie, a little surprised that he is the lone all-star from our pitching staff. The number 32 prospect in baseball did sign him to a long extension before the season began, and hoping he will ultimately be an important part of our rotation when it's a bit less talented perhaps than it is right now. Jorge Mendoza, the veteran catcher who's only in his third season with Oakland, named an all-star. He's back up to a league average offensive player this year. Does have 19 doubles, 9 homers, 53 ribbies, and a 2 WAR on the season. Got off to a really slow start, but has been hitting better over the last 2.5 months. Chisen Iwata, the free agent that we signed from Japan before the season started, the 23-year-old rookie, named an all-star, hitting .307, already has a ridiculous 33 doubles on the season, also 12 homers, 63 ribbies, a 140 WRC plus, and a WAR of close to 4. And then our final 2 all-stars this season are the youngsters who finished 1-2 in the Rookie of the Year voting a year ago. Juan Pimentel, after winning the Rookie of the Year, is an all-star for the first time in his career. He's hitting .304 with 22 homers and 76 ribbies, a 140 WRC plus, and similar to Iwata, a WAR of close to 4 here as of July 16th on the season. And his teammate, who was the runner-up last year, the left fielder Darnell Selvey, first-time All-Star award for him as well. Also batting .300, 23 doubles, 18 home runs, and a 155 WRC plus with a 4 WAR. So 5 Oakland A's among the American League All-Stars this year. Not a surprise to have that many, given that we do have the best record in baseball. Looking at the All-Star Prospects game, pretty strong representation from Oakland as well. Pitchers Wilson Rangel and Luis Aguayo, a couple of relievers that we have down in AAA. Mentioned last episode that part of the reason we were willing to trade away the veteran reliever, Mr. Hunsaker, was that we've got some really good relievers who are close to Major League ready. And Rangel, Aguayo, and Joe Heilman, who's only in AA, are 3 pitchers in the All-Star Prospects game from the Oakland A's organization. The promising young catcher, Jonah Richards, who will be brought up about 6 weeks from now, if all goes well when we get to September roster expansion, having a monster year, .321 average and 24 homers, named to the team. Mike Homer, you may remember him, a potential 2-way player that we picked in the second round in 2036. Recently got promoted to AA. He's a combined 10-4 between high A ball and AA this year. Batting a little less predictable. He had just a 51 WRC plus in high A ball, but he's actually off to a great start in AA, hitting .333 with 6 homers and 21 ribbies in his first 126 at-bats at that level. So still hopeful that Homer will ultimately develop into a big-time Major League player for us as well. So 5 Major League All-Stars and also 5 representatives from the Oakland A's organization. Actually, 6 representatives. I missed one. Roque de la Paz, a closer who's made his debut for our rookie league team in the DSL this year. IAFA signing from about a year and a half ago. Has a 7.71 ERA over the first 9 1/3 innings that he's pitched on professional baseball. But he is also on the Prospects All-Star game. So 6 A's in the All-Star Prospects game and 5 A's in the actual All-Star game here in 2040. And we swept 3 games against San Francisco at home coming out of the All-Star break. So as we sit here with just a little over a week till the trade deadline, number 1 in the power rankings. Interestingly, our divisional rivals, the Texas Rangers, are still lurking at number 3. Our lead on them remains at 8 games, but we are now up on both the Twins and the Nationals by 2 games for the best record in all of baseball. Ortega still looking for that 47th stolen base. Juan Pimentel and Emmanuel Pagani both have 17-game hitting streaks going right now. Weiss now third in the league in ERA, in addition to being second in wins. And Chuck Huntley is now third in the American League with 23 saves. We did check in not too long ago on whether Walker Jenkins' thoughts about a potential trade had changed at all. Last time we checked in, he still was not interested, and he's still exercising his 10-5 rights at this point. With the way the team is playing, we probably don't need to do anything desperate. Still going to keep an eye on Jenkins and Ibekwe, but if we end up going with the Palomares and Harmon platoon at center field, what we've been doing this year has been working incredibly. We've got the best record in baseball, and we're actually 3 games worse than expectations. Best offense in the American League, and we are in the top 3 in every offensive category except for home runs, where we're middle of the pack. And we're second in the American League in runs allowed, and we are top 3 in every pitching category except for walks and strikeouts, where we rank 6th, so still in the top half of the league in both of those categories. Excellent on the base paths and pretty good defensively as well. So this is a high-powered lineup. Clearly want to ensure that we do everything possible to maximize our opportunity to win it all this year. But we're such a good team that don't necessarily feel we have to do anything desperate, because we do have a lot of talent coming in the minors with the likes of the catcher Richards, who will give us a pretty strong left-handed bat for the stretch, as well as some of those relief pitchers that I mentioned earlier. And when the Rangers took the first 2 games of our road trip series in Texas, we're thinking things could get potentially very interesting as we're getting closer to the trade deadline. Fortunately for us, we took the last 2 games of that series. So as we sit here on July 27th, our lead in the division is still 8 games, magic number down to 51, and we are a game and a half ahead of the Twins and the Nationals for the best record in all of baseball. And we've gotten updated scouting reports on both Ibekwe and Walker Jenkins. They kind of are who we thought they were. Ibekwe definitely having a tough year for San Diego, but still looking at his ratings, think he could be a boost for our offense against right-handed pitching and center fielder. Walker Jenkins, we think, could certainly be the same thing, but he is still being a bit stubborn and exercising his 10-5 rights. He prefers to be enjoying that lovely 47-57 season in Miami rather than potentially trying to win a world championship with the Oakland Athletics. And we have submitted an updated offer to the Padres to potentially bring on Mr. Ibekwe. I know that those of you who follow us closely will realize that when we put this up a couple episodes to the Worldwide Scouting Department to opine, there were people who thought we should trade for Walker Jenkins. There were people who thought we should just retain Sergio Palomares. The one transaction that did not get any support was perhaps trading away Palomares and others to bring on Ibekwe. The price for Ibekwe seems to have gone down a bit. It's Palomares and only 1 player right now instead of Palomares plus 3 players to get the Padres to retain most or all of his contract. We've submitted an offer that they haven't accepted, obviously, that would have them retaining every penny of Ibekwe's contract, which would actually help us a bit financially by getting Palomares off our books without taking on any additional money. So we'll see what they have to say about that. Don't know if necessarily we're going to do the deal or not, but as we are getting into the final days before the trade deadline, better to at least have some irons in the fire. And we'll also keep checking in on Walker Jenkins, but my hunch is that that ship has likely sailed, and he is unlikely over the next 4 days to have a big change of heart and decide that he doesn't want to exercise those 10-5 rights that he does have with the Marlins. And since we last checked in, we won a game against Colorado to improve to 68-37. And San Diego says we almost have a trade. We would have to send Palomares for a pitcher, Motofume Uchida. And they want us to potentially add in some big players like our closer, Chuck Huntley, or our backup catcher, the brilliant defensively Hidetada Ogata. But if we add in the 4A pitcher, Jonathan Turpin, who is a former All-Star from 7 years ago, 9-5 for us in AAA this year, is organizational depth for us. If we throw him or many other people into the deal, we can bring a Beckway on board as a rental. Mentioned he's not having a particularly good season offensively with the 78 WRC plus, but we do have a very updated scouting report from just a week ago that his ratings against right-handed pitching are still pretty strong. And although his numbers this year aren't great, particularly against right-handed hitters, the fact that he is up to a 218 average with a 78 WRC plus against righties is actually some pretty significant improvement since we originally checked in on him. You can see he's actually hitting 325 in this month of July with a 138 WRC plus. So he is playing by far the best baseball of his season right now. We'll keep an eye on Walker Jenkins. But what I did like about Ibekwe was that he's durable. We know he's going to be able to be in the lineup for us, most likely, if we do make a trade for him. We'll lose, if we do make a deal, the option to have control over Palomares next year. Palomares right now with 4 years, 16 days of service, set to make about 6.5 in arbitration next season. Gravedigger's been playing a bit better of late also, up to a 107 WRC plus on the season. And he's been an average offensive player for us against right-handed pitching. The issue is that he's been well above average against left-handed pitching, which is where he's not playing as often since we've already got Joe Harmon, who's doing a pretty solid job for us in that role. I don't feel like it's a desperate move, but when I do look at Ibekwe versus Palomares against right-handed pitching, Ibekwe is a little bit better in terms of his contact rating, a little bit worse in terms of his gap power in his eye, but he's got a lot more home run power against right-handed pitching. Very similar players defensively. Palomares with better speed and better on the base paths. He's stolen 21 bases in 26 attempts this year. Ibekwe has actually been more efficient, 20 of 21 running. Doesn't have the same type of speed, although his instincts are similar to Palomares and very strong. And they both have some negatives in terms of their personalities. So we'll continue to monitor the situation over the next couple of days. It's possible Ibekwe gets traded out from under us. I'm not desperate to make the move unless we have an injury, so if it happens, it happens. And I've mentioned that the only thing that's really been frustrating to us this season is that despite having the best record in baseball, trying to guide this team into the playoffs for the 9th time in 10 seasons and trying to ultimately win a 3rd championship in the last 5 years and a 4th overall, our fan interest has really deteriorated this year. Started the year at a 98, and we've lost 8 points in fan interest despite, as I noted, being the best team in baseball and a perennial playoff contender. So that's pretty disappointing. The reason I mention that is we've got an interesting trade offer that was just presented to us not anything that I was looking for, but it is a guy who might give us a little boost in terms of fan interest. And because of that, I think it's something that I at least need to consider. And our friends in Boston have offered us 27-year-old starter Mike Galick, who is a fan favorite, a fantastic personality. He's popular nationally, very popular locally. So I don't know that he's going to move the needle incredibly, but he's a 27-year-old right-handed starter who's still arbitration eligible next season. We don't need that much help or any help in the starting rotation. That being said, Galick is a pretty good pitcher. Over the course of his major league career, he's put up a 110 ERA plus and an 84 FIP minus. Definitely having an off year this year with a 3-9 record and an ERA of over 5. It's kind of interesting. He's had bad year, good year, bad year, good year over the course of his career, and we're in a bad year phase right now. But all they want for Galick is one of our young All-Star Prospects game participants, Roque de la Paz. You know, we mentioned this was a reliever that we signed a year and a half ago as an IAFA, having a rough introduction to pro ball as an 18-year-old in the DSL with an ERA of close to 8. Having control for a season and a half of another very solid major league pitcher is certainly intriguing to me. I am definitely alarmed by the 19 home runs in 67 walks that Galick has allowed in 128 and a third innings this year. That being said, he's a pretty good right-handed pitcher. Would give us even more insurance for our rotation this year. Could be competing for a spot in the rotation next year, and would just improve this excellent bullpen that we've had this season. Definitely something that I'm seriously thinking about, even though it's not really a huge need for us. And I kind of think I have to make this deal. If for salary reasons or for the fact that we don't necessarily need 6, 7, or potentially even 8 real high-quality starting pitchers on our team next year, we have to trade somebody away. I don't think Galick, making around $11 million as he heads into his final arbitration season, is going to be someone that is hard to trade. I think we can get pretty good value in return from him if we decide to move on from him. And certainly wouldn't have signed Roque de la Paz as a left-handed IAFA a year and a half ago if we didn't think highly of him. We signed him for about $1.7 million. He is a guy who we think could be an absolutely nasty left-handed reliever. He throws in the mid-90s already. And if he's able to add another pitch with the stamina that he has, he could end up being an outstanding starter. But that is a long way off. And we're trying to win this year. And certainly adding someone like Mike Galick onto our team this year makes us better. I don't want to sacrifice the future, but who knows what Roque de la Paz is ultimately going to become. I might see if there's something a little less that we can give for him. I'm guessing there's probably not going to be. Yeah, I mean, they want the biggest players and the biggest prospects in our organization to make this deal happen, which is understandable. He's a big-time pitcher. And I've pieced together an alternative trade for Mike Galick that I think we just have to do. Likely only going to be with us a year and a half, but a pretty good starting pitcher. We do have to get rid of one of the young relievers that's in our organization who I think could be a pretty good one, Mike Bennett. He's a lefty who's been up and down this season with us, has not been particularly good in the majors with a 5.62 ERA over 8 innings, but he's been pretty good in AAA. Potentially outstanding left-handed reliever, doesn't have a lot of stamina, but has an incredible cutter and an incredible curve. The 23-year-old is fragile, great return for an 11th round pick just 5 years ago. Obviously, he's someone who's under our control for the next 6 years, but we've got some other pretty talented relievers in AAA. Don't love letting go of a lefty, but we're getting a pretty big-time starting pitcher for a year and a half. I'm certainly not going to let a potentially very good left-handed reliever prevent us from getting him. The other guy that we have to give is first baseman Daniel Navarro, recently promoted from A-ball to high A-ball. He's been very productive at both levels this year, but not, in my mind, a big-time prospect. I think I'd rather get rid of Bennett when we've got a lot of other kind of 22, 23, 24-year-old relief prospects in AAA, even if they aren't all necessarily left-handers, rather than the other left-hander, Roque de la Paz, because I think that he does have that potential to become a starter, and I think that he also has potential to be just as nasty, if not nastier, than Bennett is a lefty reliever at the major league level. So I think keeping him and also getting the Red Sox to retain 70% of Galick's contract for the remainder of this season makes sense. So not a trade that I was anticipating, but we're going to go ahead and make that deal. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we've gotten any good news as far as a positive impact on our fan interest, but certainly bringing Galick on board should help. That'll allow us to waive and DFA Juan Campos, who's been up and down a few times this year as well. Eventually we'll have a more difficult decision to make, hopefully in early August once Daniel Blanco is back. But our pitching staff is going to be absolutely loaded with this latest edition of Galick. And we're going to actually throw Galick into that stopper role that we vacated with Mike Orozco a month or so ago. Galick's stuff as a reliever, absolutely nasty, similar to Orozco. Also has incredible stamina, like those extreme ground ball tendencies for someone in the late innings of a game. Maybe it'll jumpstart his performance this season. Obviously hasn't been great. As we've talked about, in a perfect world, we'd love to demote our number 5 starter, Dave Baumler, but he is the only captain personality on our team. And given that even with Baumler having a rough year, 4-7 record with a ERA of close to 5, as we've talked about, we still have the best record in baseball in our 9 games up in the divisions. So things are going reasonably well right now. And when we get to the playoffs and we need to go to a 4-man rotation, at that point we'll lose any potential benefit from having Baumler as a member of our rotation, although presumably he'll still be pitching for us out of the bullpen somewhere. But the pitching staff is completely stacked with this latest trade. Now we just need to decide whether we're going to do something for a center fielder over the next couple of days. And we won another game yesterday, beating the Rockies 4-1 to close out that series. 2 left at home against Toronto, back in Oakland before we get to the trade deadline officially. 70-37 record has us up 2.5 games on both the Twins and the Nationals for the best record in baseball. And we've now extended our lead over the Rangers to double digits as our magic number drops to 46. Checking in, likely the final time on our good friend Mr. Jenkins, and he still is looking to veto any trade. So if we're going to make a move, Kamani Ibekwe would be the left-handed bat to bring on board. I think that the trade offer that we had gotten in response from San Diego is not unreasonable at all. I don't hate bringing on a second left-handed hitter into the lineup for the next month to help us out against right-handed pitching, which Ibekwe certainly would do. Right now, we've just got the lefty catcher Mendoza and the switch hitters Jake Ortega and Alejandro Landin, who are batting left-handed against right-handed pitching. We do have the youngster Richards, who will call up on September 1st, who will likely be taking over, give us another lefty bat in the lineup for Luis Godina. Feel bad for Godina. He's the number 93 prospect in baseball, and all he's done this year as a rookie is hit 288 in 264 at-bats with a 109 WRC plus. And as soon as we get to September 1st, he's going to move into a role where he's likely only playing regularly against left-handed pitching. But when you have a young prospect like Richards in the organization, who's the fifth best prospect in baseball, those are the type of decisions we have to make. The minor league system does rank 9th overall. That's largely driven by the fact that we were the top organization when this season began, but Ernesto Comunez, Federico Ariola, the two excellent young pitchers, and the great young second baseman Chisen Iwata have all three of them fallen off of the list of prospects over the last couple of months as they've become established major leaguers. So I think that's the big reason why the minor league system now ranks 9th. 3 top 50 prospects have migrated to the major leagues over the last couple of months. And we've made it to trade deadline day. Might as well check in on Walker Jenkins one last time, and he's still exercising those 10-5 rights. Interestingly, we think Ibekwe overall has dropped a little bit in terms of the always accurate star ratings since the last time we checked in, but he is still available. I think I'm going to go with the theory, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I do think Ibekwe is probably going to be a bit more productive than Sergio Palomares over the last 2+ months of this season. But I don't think it's going to be a big enough difference that we need to make this trade. If Ibekwe had been more productive this year, I think I'd be more inclined to do it. Palomares, despite the fact that he's only been a little bit above average offensively, does still have a 2.6 WAR thanks to his good defense. His defense looks very similar to Ibekwe, although Palomares a little better. I believe he's a 60 in center field as opposed to the 55 that Ibekwe is. Both are outstanding base runners, but Palomares does have a lot more speed. And I do think that there is some value in having Palomares potentially still in the mix to be on our team next year. So ended up being much ado about nothing, but we are not going to make any final trades as we play against Toronto and then get through the trade deadline here in 2040. And we've moved past the trade deadline. Of course, immediately past the trade deadline, starting pitcher Chase Dora with an injury diagnosis. Fortunately, it's just a mild calf strain that'll impact him for 4 days, so shouldn't really impact him at all as far as his starts. And fortunately, we did make the trade for another starting pitcher, but seems like there's always an injury right when you get past the trade deadline. Player development upgrade, Jonah Richards continues to improve, as I mentioned over the course of the last several episodes. He's looking for monster money for an extension, which is part of the reason why we're delaying his service clock as much as possible. But having an absolutely incredible season, 323 average, 30 homers, and 78 ribbies in just 96 games in AAA, 178 WRC plus, a WAR of close to 6. He's learned to play first and kind of third base down in the minors, but his future is certainly going to be at a catcher, although I think with the fact that we already have Mendoza, who was an all-star this year, on board as an excellent left-handed hitting catcher, that Richards, when he does join us in September, will likely be taking over for Godina as our primary first baseman against right-handed pitching, which should give us a nice boost to the offense. So when all was said and done, the addition of Richards should be a huge step forward for the offense about a month from now. And the addition of Mr. Gaelic gives us a pretty darn good pitching prospect. Not even a pitching prospect, a proven major league pitcher, a proven major league starter. The walks have continued to be an issue with 3 in the 3 innings of work that he's had, and he's also given up 6 hits. So he's had a loss and a save in his first 2 appearances with us. So he's definitely mixing it up in that stopper role. Now that we're kind of to August 1st, I'm going to give a little more thought to how I want the bullpen roles to actually look. But feeling pretty good about how our Oakland Athletics are positioned as we head into the final 2 months of the season. 71-38 is the best record in baseball, and we're 2 games up on the Nationals for the top record in baseball, 2.5 up on the Twins for the best record in the AL. Pimentel is now 3rd in the league in ribbies. Ortega finally has stolen a couple more bases to set a career high as he looks to lead the league in steals in his early 30s. And Doug Weiss is 2nd in the American League in wins. Those are our 3 primary names on the leaderboard as we finish up the month of July. We've had a winning percentage of .600 or higher every month of this season. 17-8 record in the month of July. Still 1st in the American League in runs scored, and still 2nd in the American League in runs allowed. We're actually 4 games worse than Pythagorean expectations. So the expectation is certainly that when all is said and done, we're going to wrap up the AL West hopefully by mid-September. And then hopefully when all is said and done, not just have a first-round bye in the playoffs, but hopefully home field advantage for as long as our team is alive in the playoffs. And we'll find out how the rest of the regular season goes in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.